all started literally just me having to do my taxes. What I kept running into was people telling me that my assets weren't worth anything because they were intangible, because they were music, because it was websites, because it was merch, because it was creative endeavors. Just giving me the wrong input. What I learned when I had to sit down last year to do my taxes, I was looking for the wrong type of accountant. CPA, an estate lawyer. Once you get beyond a certain threshold, banks and fiduciaries and other intermediaries have to deal with you a little bit differently. These are your translating layer. And then there are things called vehicles. I had a lot of assets, but I did not yet have vehicles. We have to think from that narrative. Once we do that, we stop thinking about income, because it's not about income. That's great, but it's one byproduct of this. And that's having assets. This is a natural byproduct of this. And once we start to think in assets instead of income, then that's when we start to take over. In what way do we mean take over, of course? Well, what ended up happening to me was I found that I had 260 assets, 300 human songs out on all streaming platforms. I have hundreds of thousands of AI creations. I'm one of the main AI developers, and I've created so much. I've had books, I have lots of intellectual property, but that intellectual property means nothing unless it's sitting in a vehicle. What it was I was developing my assets in a way they would for venture capitalism. And I took all the different business approaches that I learned from finding out about other ultra high net worth individuals, and I decided, okay, how do we transmute these mechanisms that they use? And so each thing that I have as my assets, all 260 lines, is really a transmutation of classic business models that we all have. And these become frameworks. And these frameworks can then be sold as white papers. Oh, well, how are we gonna sell frameworks to people? How are we gonna do this? Our income brain will say that. But remember what I said, we aren't coming from an income brain, coming from an asset frame of mind. Reach out to governments. We reach out to governments and we offer our proposals to governments. Not just governments, but schools, different fiduciaries and intermediaries that can actually do the conversion layer of our white papers, our frameworks, and our intellectual property. How do you convert paper to money? Well, that's the whole thing. I've been teaching this on my platforms, and I've been showing you guys. BlackRock or Disney or Apple or Amazon, what do? They use intellectual property. A lot of them use proposals. For example, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he has it so that his employees have to write 6-page proposals to him. And guess what? When you have a proposal, that proposal gets added to your net worth as intellectual property. What is really happening here is there's a language of net worth leverage. These people understand how they found mechanics to raise their net worth and leverage it so that they will be able to go ahead and access different things from different fiduciaries. How does this all happen legally? Well, it's always been happening. This is how money actually works. So the issue is we have a lot of grifters online. We have a lot of people trying to teach people how to make money. But money and wealth are two different things. Whenever I hear the rhetoric of people saying, well, you would have to work this many hours to achieve this or rip off this many employees to achieve this, that teaches me something about their wealth literacy and not something about wealth. Money as in cash, okay? Or as I call it as well, and I'm not the only person that calls it that, it's called fiat. This is money. What's this? We can almost argue that wealth is your assets or estates, but that would be a marginal error as well. What you own. Wealth is what you own, but it's about going ahead and putting your assets together inside the vehicles like we spoke of and creating a way to regenerate wealth putting your wealth in a loop. So with venture capitalism, I found that a lot of these people are using extractive methods in order to venture their capital. And that's why we keep seeing the same repeat nonsense happening in this world, because a lot of people, they achieve a certain amount of wealth. And then when they have to go to fiduciaries in order to take anything from that wealth, to liquidate that wealth in any way or have any form of liquidity from their wealth, they're guided in ways that are extractive. And there's no real non-extractive routes that are developed on a widespread scale. So creators are the world builders. Wealth is regenerative in the hands of a creator. Now, when I talk about high net worth people that are accessing these fiduciaries and intermediaries that are guiding them to put their wealth in different places, the reason why they're going through this and they have someone to guide them in the first place is because they're not creative enough to go ahead and find regenerative ways. It's also, they're not creative enough to have multiple assets that they're sitting on. So this is something that's very important. If you're creative enough to make music or anything, you're creative enough to make intellectual property. And intellectual property helps regenerate the economy. Now, it's actually better to tax a wealthy creator than a wage earner. Now, if I was allowed last year to realize my assets, there would have been an entire wealth distribution. That's okay. I'm all right with that not happening last year. I know this year magical things will happen. But because I understand this, it kind of bothers me a little bit, because I know that the things that I would have been able to do and help certain places and people with, I wasn't able to do that, right? And the thing is I hear a lot of people saying, well, tax the wealthy, do this. A lot of these people that you want them to tax do not have realized assets. And as I know personally, the CRA or any IRS or anything cannot tax unrealized assets. And that's why we're always stuck in this loop. So when you ask for more taxes to be raised and everything, it's actually the wage earners and the workers that suffer. And of course, the middle tier employers. So what ends up happening is we get taxed more and the wealthy just keep sitting on wealth, not money. Because what it comes down to is a creator, again, like I said, can create regenerative wealth once they're taught how to in the structure. So when you're taught how to actually go ahead and regenerate wealth in any structure, you'd be more than willing to pay taxes because you know the money comes back to you. That's the thing. It's far better to tax a wealthy creator than a wage earner. Now, regenerative. What are different regenerative tools that are available to creators that aren't really available to these different types of wealth classes, right? So we have trees, we have music, art and beauty, assets, integrated estate and infrastructure, books, texts, frameworks, and repair. These are all different asset classes that a lot of people don't even know about.